It was, 5:30 in the afternoon. I don't remember what day of the week it was, but it was, high traffic time, and it seemed like it just took forever to get there. When I finally got there and I saw our crews working and I saw the vehicle that Mr. Krogh had been in, instantly, first thing that came to my mind is, yeah, there's nobody alive in that vehicle.
It was a concrete truck versus a small car. We noticed as soon as we arrived on scene that he was ejected from the vehicle. Found he was unresponsive, had the snoring respirations with some fluid in his airway as well. We
knew that we needed to do something significant, and that was a rapid sequence intubation. Basically, he managed his respiratory status on our
own. My son David was at piano lesson, and Rod was supposed to meet us there. And he was over an hour late. He didn't show up. And I was calling all over to find him. I told a friend while I was on the phone with the Capitol Security, I said, would you please start calling hospitals? I had her call Bryan West, and I remember her face when she came over to me and she said, they need to talk to you. By the time I got there, he was still in surgery. I was met by an emergency room nurse. She took us back to surgical waiting area where we needed to wait for the doctor to be done with the surgery. I was told he was in a medically induced coma and he needed to have very little stimulation. But I remember walking in the room and they prepared me. They told me it was going to be a shock to see what he looked like and the many machines. He was unrecognizable though. I mean, at first when they told me that was him in the room, I was kind of taken aback, like, no, it's not. But I actually, the only reason I knew it was him was because of his lips. And I saw his lips and I knew that was him.
I was called to see Rod on the second to third hospital day when his neuro exams and his brain pressures were starting to take a turn in the wrong direction. He had fractures across the skull, which was over the artery areas, and he had an epidural hematoma, multiple bleeds within the brain, fractures across the base of the skull, and then the fractures were such that it actually allowed air into the brain, called pneumocephalus, which in and of itself carries a 20% chance of getting meningitis and other horrible complications. So his brain injury was one of the more severe ones that we see. We took Rod down to 32 degrees centigrade, both by packing him in ice and then also inserting a catheter into the vein, the main vein within his body that had chilled water running through that to keep him stable and at 32 degrees. But even with that, and with all the other tricks that we had, we were unable to keep his intracranial pressures and perfusion pressures of his brain cells into a place where we thought that he was going to do well. Rod actually did not come up out of hypothermia when we wanted to. We had to keep him down because as we brought him up, his intracranial pressures went up again. And it was greatly excited to see him the next day or so when he suddenly woke up and he just was a new man. And that's when you realize that yes, it's been worth it. We did save those brain cells, and there's good hope for a future for this patient.
The first thing I remember, honestly, is a month to month and a half later when Bryan West was putting back in the cranium part of my skull back on the left side of my head. That's honestly the first true memory I have.
In Rod's case, it was separated into stages. His initial procedure was to do the rotation skin flap, which was a hair-bearing area of his scalp, to cover up the defect, the bone defect, and then skin graft around the area where we took the scalp from. The secondary stages, which were multiple, were to eliminate the skin graft area through using tissue expanders to expand up his scalp so we had enough hair-bearing coverage to replace where the skin graft was. And this was achieved through multiple procedures.
Because of Rod's injuries to his head, he would come into our specialty clinic, trauma clinic, for dressing changes to his scalp, where we would treat those daily to help with the healing process. And in doing that, we would teach his wife how to do those dressing changes so that he wouldn't have to come in every day. So we got to see Rod's progression through his healing process along the way, and it was pretty incredible.
Our ultimate goal was to give Rod a full head of hair like he was before the accident. And I think we achieved that through the multiple procedures that we did. It takes a special patient to be able to go through those multiple procedures to do that kind of a thing for someone. He is really an exceptional person, and I enjoyed working with him.
One thing that just struck me with Rod is he was always exemplifying a wonderful sense of humor, and always just really was more concerned about everybody else's well-being than himself. He just made our time with him very special.
It was quite interesting for us to see the congressmen and senators coming in, as well as all of the support that he got from the other people in the legislature and his co-workers, families and extended families. You could tell that this was a special person, that he had a lot of people that loved and cared for him.
He came to the station. It was a pretty emotional experience. They sat down with us and expressed their gratitude, and at the same time, we all kind of said that, you know, the stars aligned for him. It had a great response from the EMS. Everybody on scene worked very well together. We were kind of a small link in the big chain that he had.
This is very touching when he came back to the clinic, because he stuck his hand out and he said, "Hi, I'm told I need to thank you for a lot of things." He said, "I don't know who you are, but he said, I do know that you guys saved me."
They were wonderful from beginning to end all the time. This doesn't happen every day. You see a car that looks like his car and you don't see survivors from it. Or if you do see a survivor, you don't see him like him, that's back at work and with his family and functioning completely normally as he was before. I knew that they were good at what they do, but unless you sit there and watch what they're doing and see how brilliant they are, you don't realize what we have here in Lincoln.
It was a horrific car accident, based on the pictures that I've seen, and my heart goes out to, and I will be eternally grateful, thankful, appreciative of everything that was done for me at Bryan.